really honored to be here. And I woke up to the weather, and being the last single at Cavanagh, I thought I might have 2 or 3 people showing up tonight. So I'm very honored that this many people showed up to support me, so thank you. So one of the questions that authors get asked the most, I think, is how you come up with your characters. How did you create the character? And for me, it's authors answer it very differently, so I find it fascinating. Some authors, I think, really do come up with their character. But for me, it feels like the character already exists and has come from the other realm and is kind of haunting me in a way. And it's my job as an artist to discover why they came to me and why they want me to tell their story and how I can tell the story the best way that I can. And so when I think of writing the book, it kind of was in 3 parts. When I wrote the book, it was the first part, and then it moves into life went a little sideways, and then a rewrite, and the actual when I published the book, and then now I'm working on the movie. We'll talk about a bit of all of it. But the best way to explain it is to start when I actually got a literary agent and had written the book and thought everything was happening so swimmingly. I was about 34, and I was living in Calgary, Alberta. I'd gone through a divorce, but stayed there, and everything was going well, and I was hairdressing, writing my book, doing lots of traveling, and I had signed on with a literary agent that I'd met in Paris, which was really cool, and I've been doing hair for about 10 years, so it felt like I was kind of at the pinnacle of my career. I had a literary agent, which usually is harder to find than an editor, so you kind of feel like you've made it the minute you sign on with somebody. So I also met who would become my daughter's father, and so he was living in Brisbane, Australia, but was from Calgary and worked in oil and gas. So when that all happened, it felt like a great time to kind of close down my life in Calgary. I'm from Minnesota originally, but I had lived in Calgary for a long time, and any Minnesotans? Usually there are. Usually there are. Midwesterners, I know. So it felt like a really great time to just close down my salon and go for it, and it felt like everything was happening for me. And then about a month in of living there, things really started going sideways. The Jekyll and Hyde kind of came out, and I know now, years later, I understand abusive relationships. I understand that there's a red carpet that is rolled out at first, and then a month in, once someone's kind of isolated, it starts to become, the Jekyll and Hyde will come out, and it starts to become an abusive situation. But here I was, 35 in Australia, and I had about 15 going away parties. I closed down my salon, and I was just determined to make it work, and I thought I could. It kind of felt like Hansel and Gretel, like some weird fairy tale that I had forgotten to leave a trail of bread. I felt like my life was gone, and here I was. So it was like, oh shit, but we're going to figure this out. And anyone who's been in any kind of abusive relationship, even with a friend or family member, parts of it are really fun. I mean, it's not like it's all bad. And I thought that only happened to weak people, and I thought I've traveled the world by myself. I left evangelical fundamentalism, I've been divorced, I've lived my life. I'm like not a weak person. So I stayed in it for about 9 months, and in that time, he lost his job. We moved from Australia back to Vancouver. And then I found myself in Vancouver with things going sideways again. But really, this time I was pregnant with my daughter, and I really started trying to find people that could help. I knew I had to go, but my life as I knew it in Calgary was gone. My family was all retired to Florida. I didn't want to go live in a retirement community with my parents. My sister's in small town Wisconsin. It just was like, yeah, and kind of like, shit. So I just was asking, I had therapists, I was going to Al-Anon, I just was trying to figure out I just wanted someone to tell me what to do. And then one day I listened to this talk by Oprah. I know she's controversial, I love Oprah Winfrey. But there was this talk by Oprah, and she was saying, basically when you get lost off your track, and you find yourself listening, and asking everybody, what do you think I should do? What should I do? What should I do? Stop, get still, and be quiet, and let you know what to do. Listen. So it really stuck with me, and of course she ended it with that poem Invictus by, what's his name here? William Ernest Henley, that I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. And I just thought, I was 4 months pregnant now by this time, leaving my husband, and I just thought that's all, every decision, crazy as it may seem, it needs to be around becoming somehow back to the captain of my own ship, so that when my daughter's born, she's got at least one parent that's like, okay. So, of all the things I could have done, I had a really good friend that had a bed and breakfast in the south of Provence, and so that's what I ended up doing. I went to Provence, and Provence is very different from the rest of France. It's extremely slow-paced, and I remember getting there and thinking, I don't know if Oprah meant this still. I don't know. Like, animals that are asleep on the sidewalk, you think they're dead. Like, everybody's just... It was August in Provence. So, but there's so much happened there, that's a whole other book, but there was 3 things that happened there that really, and this time my agent hadn't been able to sell my book, so I kind of almost given up on it. But 3 things happened there that would make me change the trajectory of the book. And the first one was realizing that it was such that we live in such a how-to culture. I think I got to France and, you know, I was only going to stay for a month just to get my head on straight and figure out what to do. And the midwives when I went to see, you know, I was like so used to asking, what do I do? What do I eat? What do I drink? Like, I'm not feeling well. And first of all, I had this really lovely Dutch, over-the-top woman translating for me who was so funny. But like asking coffee and things like that, they giggled over the fact that I was on any kind of pill or any kind of medication, or what is it? Vitamins. And prenatal vitamins they thought was hysterical and very American. They just said, go to the farmer's market, eat what's like available, and you'll be fine. And things like coffee, like that. You know, I remember her saying, "How to drink your coffee? If it doesn't feel good in your body, stop drinking it." Like there were so many things I wanted to list. You know what to do. It was very American of me. And so learning, and then the how-to books. I remember telling this Marjolaine that I was reading. Pema Chodron. I love Pema Chodron, but I was reading something, what was her book? What to Do in Difficult Times or something, and she was like, oh, throw it in the garbage. That Europeans hate things like that. Like, throw it in the garbage. You know, you want to learn, they hate how-to things because they have more of an intuition about them, so that was starting to drill into me a little bit. And then the apartment that I was staying in, France is very bureaucratic, so I don't remember why, but the main level apartment, she couldn't rent out, my friend Julie. And so, even though I had a bathroom, kitchen sink, and bed, she had turned it into a library, and I just got to kind of stay there. So I was living in this beautiful library with art and all these English books. And so I started reading more philosophy, and kind of as a joke, I grabbed this book called The Witch in Every Woman. I thought, oh, this will be so funny. but it took me down this crazy path of really understanding the history of women and back to Celtic times, and how the fairy tales at that time was more of like a woman would have a dream or a knowing, and she would warn the king and he'd save the kingdom, but it was all about the woman being her own heroine. And it just made me, and then kind of took me down a rabbit hole of just with the history of women, and realizing that our intuition and our knowledge and our emotions that should have been our superpowers slowly got, between the patriarchy and the witch's hammer coming out in Germany, kind of all got turned around, and we're taught that that makes us crazy, that part of us makes us insane. It made me kind of also realize that it wasn't just my evangelical and my mother. That totally screwed me up. My mom's not here, I can say that. But it made me feel like it was just this lineage of women. And the third thing that kind of started happening was, once I only was going to stay there for a month, but it was so peaceful and lovely, and things were still crazy back home, and I just decided to stay there. So I didn't get back on my flight, and I stayed to have Eva there. And once I decided to stay there, it's just like word got around in this little French village. I didn't even speak the language, but things just started, it felt like the book The Alchemist. Things started showing up at my door. I got baby clothes and strollers, and women just started showing up. There was this really sweet woman. One of them was Maya Tawari. She's called Mother Maya. She had she was a holistic master, and she opened the first Ayurvedic clinic in New York, and she's written a lot of books, and her big thing was that she had actually at a young age healed herself of cancer. She just, instead of doing chemo, she went and lived in the wilderness and healed herself. And so her and I went on all these walks, and she was this lovely motherly figure, and she taught me that you can heal yourself from anything and come back from whether it's physical or mental or emotional. We have the power to heal ourselves. And then, anyway, fast forward, what does this all have to do with Lucy? So, a couple years later, I was living here, and COVID happened, and the book, nothing had happened with the book. So there was about a 4-year period where I just let it go, and I thought, I'm never going to write again, I'm never going to put the book out. But then the way I'm talking about like how a character evolves with you, COVID happened, and everyone was kind of self-publishing, and one of my friends had self-published, and I just kind of started getting up early and reading through the book, like really had nothing better to do. And I started really realizing that I'd missed something, that I was kind of glad it hadn't published. I think there's something nice about thinking that a publishing company, that you got picked, like someone picked you, but I started realizing I could self-publish, and something was missing in it, and it's because I hadn't lived it, and I really like realized why Lucy had picked me, like how much I hadn't really lived the sort of all about the intuition piece. Like she really lived a really cool physical journey, and it was an adventure story, but there was a lot more of the intuition that needed to happen with her. So a lot of things that happened. I won't give anything away, but Vinny, who's a big character in the book, she became a way bigger part of the book as a motherly figure, just because that's what I had had so much in France, and was from so many different women. Lucy's kind of deepest need, but from adventure to, I realized she was actually craving more of a belonging, so the ending drastically changed. And Will became a much deeper character. He became more of a feministic, like kind of kinder male character. He's an outlaw, but that changed a lot. And then the ending completely changed, but that's, yeah. Anyone who's read it, I'll chat with them about. I don't want to ruin anything. And then I started reading about, there's a lot of history between the male myth story and the female myth story. And the male myth story is more about sort of the patriarch, it's more about divide and conquer, and it's more of an aggressive sense. And the female myth story is more about kind of combine and grow. And that's what's actually kind of on the rise now. Like Barbie's a great example. That is actually a perfect female myth story about our feminine nature and combining and helping each other and as women. And then, so the book came out, and I finally just had a nerve to self-publish it. Kind of didn't have anything to lose. Didn't have a lot going on. So, now 2 years later, what's really fun is being approached by the Film Ranch and working on the movie. And I think that's why Lucy, as a character, is so close to me, because the film is such a, moving from being in her head to such a motion picture, it's so much more nuanced, every little thing to catch. And then, it's a 200-page book, and when Michelle approached me about doing the screenplay for it, because most artists don't do their own books, I'm really honored to be able to do it. Most of the time when your book is optioned, what it means is they're retaining the rights for maybe 15 months or so, and they're going to have their own screenwriters and stuff work on it. But because the Yellowstone Film Ranch is small and lovely, she just wanted to help me and take a stab at letting me kind of work the screenplay myself. And if you think of I thought, that would be so easy. It's a 200-page, it's a short book as it is. I thought of it as a movie, but it'll take me 2 seconds. But it's been a year. And the main thing is, coming from being in the character's head and being able to have a lot. I think writing a novel, to be honest, is easier, and you have a lot more room to kind of roam around in your character's head. A screenplay is so fast, and even a 200-page book would be, if you think it would be probably about a 10-hour audiobook, and you're kind of combing that down to an hour and a half. So it's hard as an author to figure out what. It's also very fun to figure out what needs to be in the book and what's really important. And so the genres, even though I remember when I was at with the publishing company, they were like, what's a Western? And I was like, did a Western? I didn't really but it takes place in the American West, but I don't really see it as a Western. I see it as more of a love story and more of a myth story, more of so that's where we're going as well with the movie. And it's really fun having come from doing, a book is so lonely, you're just writing by yourself. It's really fun to move into, you know, every scene, I have to trust that the director will capture it, you know, camera operators, the director of photography, the lighting, the costume, set design. It's really fun to think of, when you think of how many people roll through those credits. I have so much more respect for that now that I just didn't understand before. Just for fun, I'm actually going to read, the first page of the screenplay. It's a rough draft, but I think it's more fun than reading out the book just because it's been a little while. So when I first started writing the book, the very first scene that I had was this girl sitting by a stagecoach. That's not how I start the book, but it's kind of how I'm starting the movie. This would happen about 17 pages in, but I will try to guide you through what you're seeing in the movie, the opening of the movie. Okay, so fade in on nothing. The world is black and there is no sound except a clicking of the revolver, spinning of the chamber. The sound repeats. A face fills the frame, dirty yet strikingly beautiful, eyes gazing out in the distance. A tear runs down her cheek to cut through a streak of dirt. Her name is Lucy Cavanagh, mid-20s. So Lucy's voiceover, you hear her voice. Aristotle's definition of courage is someone who endures the right undertaking for the right motive. I took this to heart, as though somehow life would reward me for being courageous, make me invincible. A blackbird caws out in the distance. As the frame widens, we see she has long, tangled hair and wears an elegant dress that's torn and muddy, sitting against a stagecoach, holding a gun, clicking the hammer back with her thumb. Lucy's voiceover continued. That was before I saw this place. This land does not care whether you are courageous. It seems there's only one hard and steadfast rule you must follow in order to survive it. Now we see what she's staring at. Bloodied, massacred bodies scattered around the ashes of a dead fire. A raven lands and pecks at one. Just beyond the bodies, coyotes are pacing along the forest line. Back with the eyes. Slowly she stands and starts towards the coyotes, the gun aimed on them. Her hands shake violently, yet there's a fierceness to her. She fires. Sounds of yelping echo through the forest as the coyotes scurry off. She looks in disbelief at the gun still smoking in her hands. And Lucy's voiceover continues. It was May 28, 1867. It was a Tuesday. That was the day I fired a gun for the first time. That's a good.
Yeah.
That'll go through lots of edits, but you guys are privy to the process. So I wanted to leave some room for, I know people would have some questions. I tried to cover the main parts of the movie, but do people have questions about the book, the process of screenwriting?
When in your journey did you start the writing?
I started the writing I was in my late 20s, and I was kind of unhappy. I was hairdressing, and that was going well. And I was just started my English degrees, and I was married, and I was going on a 6-week holiday. We were backpacking around Europe, and I remember being excited just to relax and read a fun book. And I went to the bookstore, and I left empty-handed because I just found literary books a little too heavy. I like the theme-based, but a little too slow. And then the genre books didn't have big enough themes. I like the fast-paced characters. And I just wanted something in between. I left kind of not finding the book I wanted to read, and then I just really thought, that's when I started seeing Lucy. That's when she started kind of being around me, and I thought, I'll just take a blank notebook. It might be more fun just to write the story I want to write, and it was.
Yeah, awesome. I love your dedication.
Thank you. Yeah, the dedication is to Lucy Cavanagh. It's thank you for haunting me for 9 years and never giving up on me, because she did. Through all of what I just talked about, she really did. She was always, and even the first couple of years I was writing it, I was hairdressing in Calgary, and it was very fun, and lots of gay boys and gay bars, and it was a scream, and it was in traveling, and life kind of got in the way sometimes, but Lucy never gave up on it. So, yeah.
How did you come up, how did Lucy reveal her name?
That's a really good question. I think it just was there. I think she just told, there's, authors do really crazy things. I've read things that authors will go grocery shopping as their character. They almost become method actors. Like, I think, you know, I've always been one to like pour a wine for Lucy across the table. I really believe in like your characters around you and a part of you. So she probably just told me. Yeah.
Do you still like Lucy?
I love Lucy, and it's really, the screenplay almost feels like a chance to like to make it even a little bit better because it's got to be tighter, and I can't wait to see the actress who's going to play her, and like, yeah, just.
Me too, and Will.
Yes, and Will.
And who do you see it? I mean, if you could choose.
If I, you know, when I was writing the book, it was always like a young Kate Beckinsale. Like she just has that really pretty gentleness to her. And then Will, on my board that I have, Will is like a hot Gucci model. He's just very, very sexy. Doesn't say a lot, which was what we like. My partners.
So I'm kind of late to the game, but I just finished watching 1923.
Yeah.
And Spencer and
Yeah.
that's
I love
what
yes.
I see those two as Lucy
I
and Will.
would. Spencer would be interested. Yeah, he's very hot, sexy. Yes.
And quiet.
Yeah. Yes. He knows when to just
Yeah.
zip it. Man a few words. Yeah. Which is just who Will is. Yeah.
I really admire that Lucy stays strong through your life, even through having your child and moving around the country and the world and traveling and wanting to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
But Lucy is still with you, but then there's Stacy, and I love that.
It is really fun. I think the writing is the greatest honor. I think it's having someone, it's like having someone haunt you kind of and want to write your story. The sequel, this won't give anything away. There's a teacher coming in, and the sequel is really fun too. It's a new character. Everyone's still around, but it's a new character coming in, which is a lot of fun. And she's slowly. It's hard. It was really hard to move away from Lucy, truth be told. But this new character is pretty fun too, and I know she's in my life for a different reason, the same way Lucy was.
Which I really love.
It's like discovering that now.
When you were going through your tribulations,
Yeah.
Lucy was there.
Yeah.
Did she ever give you advice? Did she ever?
No, you know, I think if anything, I was kind of like, fuck, I wrote your book, like, can you just get published? Like, can you pull some magic strings? You're with an agent, I told your story, like, I worked hard, can you just get published? I think I was almost like, oh, there was that moment where I was so glad it didn't, because the book is not what it would have been had it gotten published 4 years earlier. But I think life, I had to go through what I had to go through to tell that story. And life is just like that, yeah.
Can you say more about why you feel it's not a Western?
Yes. So there's a book by John Truby called Genre. She asked to say more about why I don't feel like it's a Western. There's a book by John Truby called Genres, and the way he explains the Western genre is that it's about basically when people watch a movie, when they watch a love story, a mystery, they're looking for certain points for it to hit, and a Western genre is more about, it's always a lone ranger or a sheriff or somebody helping protect whoever's building their home and their fence. He's helping protect the pioneers, and he's kind of fighting for the little guy. He's kind of fighting to keep animals out, you know, like at the time it would have been Native Americans. He's fighting for the little guy, and I don't think, even though it's set in the American West, I think it's more of a female story. It's not really, it's more of a combining story about a town and a village, and it's like to me it's like a Western Schitt's Creek. You know, it's not as much about, you know, finding your own land and protecting it. Does that make sense? And that's how he explains, and that is a lot of the Westerns. It's that lone sheriff protecting, you know, the citizens at all costs. And it isn't really, there's a little bit of that in there, but it's just not the main focus.
It's not John Wayne.
It's not a John Wayne story.
No, I think of it as an adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely an adventure story that happens to take place
Yeah.
in that time, you know. I mean, it isn't just a romance.
Yeah.
There's lots of...
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because the Western is the original American myth story. It's very much like we are a culture that like our fences and our homes, and we like to be in our own homes, we like our own property. You know, we're not a, you know, living in Spain, being out on the plaza, living in a little tiny apartment, but we all, you know, it's not a socialist, it's a very American, the Western is a very American built story, I think. Yeah. And
There are some details, like fashion and the time built in, and I just wondered if that was like, did you research that, or was just part of your like background knowledge that you just wanted to incorporate it?
Yeah, I researched a lot of it, and you know what's funny about growing up in a very, even though I grew up very fundamental religious, I wasn't allowed to listen to music. It was very sheltered. But for whatever reason, my mom didn't pay attention to the books I was reading, so I was reading, by 11, I was probably reading some pretty racy, you know, Bridgerton type of stuff that I think is very funny. So I liked that, I always loved that genre. And so a lot of, I think it's interesting. I don't know why, I think that time in America, after the Civil War with the, you know, Jesse James type of era, it was all just fascinating. And being a hairdresser, I just like fashion, so a lot of that, it's really fun to think that a costume designer is going to like, get it. Yeah, and that's something where a movie is more visual, so I have Lucy at the end of the book doing more shopping and becoming more fashionable, whereas that's going to have to happen. I want that art to happen sooner. She'll start to incorporate leather and just becoming, you know, more of an interesting, you know, a new hat. And, yeah.
I guess I'm halfway through and I'm excited, but the first thing I thought of was, this would be a great movie.
Oh,
and that's I could like see it playing out, but I love the fact that as she went through things, you were like, okay, Will, where are you? You know, you were wanting, it was like, he's got to be there. So I won't say anymore.
No, it's really lovely to hear because
I love that.
Because the screenplay has to happen faster. I've got to get them. The real story really is when they become the Holloways. So I've got to make that happen faster. But I do really like. I still want to. I like that where she's on her own a bit, and you understand why she.
And the things that the people she meets say to her.
Yeah.
And it comes across as, okay, I hope you listen. So,
Aww.
where are you, Will? And she needs you.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. That helps actually.
This is not autobiographical in any way.
Well, I mean, of course.
I mean, there's sprinkles.
Oh,
of you in there.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I always feel like kind of a Bridget Jones, and I think Lucy has a little bit of the nerve. I feel kind of an idiot. And I think Lucy has a lot of that in her. There's a couple of scenes that I just, yeah, she's kind of naive, but like really curious too, and open.
So it's, I can't believe I can't remember it right now, and I have to ask my sister, but I had just read your book, and my sister sent me a little self-published book that the family had written about the great-grandmother or something, and it was not as cool a story, but a very similar story in working her way west like that. I mean, like, I went, wow, this is really weird, but I mean, it, so where you got that whole trajectory for her, what inspired that? Is that just the story she told you, or is that...
Yeah, and I think it's just a great symbol. Like, I like that era because I think leaving the East Coast, you're such a fish out of water, and the frontier is just was always kind of fascinating to me. That, you know, like, I think 50% of people got ran over by a wagon wheel. I mean, it was like you were like tough thing to head out. And I think there's a plaque at Fort Kearny or somewhere where it says. The week done along the way, it's very like only the strong survived. It's very much like most people didn't survive this, and most people didn't even try. And I think that's more what I'm trying to get across in the screenplay, is that life is about knowing that you tried. If you're 100 years old and lying in your bed, at least you know you tried. And don't we all want that on some level? Yeah.
Annie loaned her sister her copy she bought a couple of years ago. And it's just replaced it. So I'm starting it tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think too, of all the books I read, the males were always the hero of the story, and there was always like, you know, I mean, remember I was little, like I was reading, you know, where someone got kidnapped and she was like had it, you know, with her captor. But it was always the male was kind of the hero, and she was always a little bit of a damsel in distress, and it just kind of irritated me. There are so many amazing stories of women throughout history that are just not, and for whatever reason, westerns tend to be very male,
Right.
which is why Michelle and I are having a lot of fun doing a very female-driven western. It's just
Yeah.
really fun.
And that's what I love about your writing. I mean, you just really go from one state to another, and you really have traveled through that era. And women were are strong, and they were definitely strong then. And you just move forward in your own life, which, as you know, the writer, I'm looking at this writer as, wow, knowing her personally. And I just recently met her like in the last couple of months. I just think, wow, she feels it with her writing and through her life. And very amazing
Thank
to
you.
hear this. It's beautiful. And yeah, love it. Very true. To going back decades of women's struggles and travels and being so strong, and then looking at you now as a person in today's life. Beautiful,
Aw.
Stacy.
I remember when I was going through a lot, there's someone, a really close friend said this, whenever you're going through something, a sister friend will always show up. And they do. I mean, I've been lost in many of my travels, and some woman shows up and helps me. I swear, it's just a thing. I swear.
Yeah, the hardship from, we were talking about going from the east
Yeah.
to the west. 50% of them are women.
Yeah, thank you.
You know?
Yes.
I know. And
But their stories aren't
A
told.
badass is a badass.
Yeah.
Right, and this family member used, you know, journals, diaries, or whatever, and wrote the story. But it's a great story, but it's really pretty dry, and I just love it. You brought it to life and made it, you know, it's such a similar story. And there's probably dozens or more, hundreds of real stories. I mean, these gals in Ireland that, you know, said they marry somebody in Seattle.
Yes.
When they're 50
yeah.
and go, yeah, make their way across. Yeah, so I just love that you took that and turned it into such a delightful story.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
When do you think filming will start?
So a lot of it is held up on me. Once, basically, from my understanding, this is a whole new world to me, but once we have a decent screenplay, once we have a good rough draft and have it with an editor and feel like we've got a good start, because it'll change quite a bit throughout the filming. The director will change things. They'll change things in editing. So Michelle was kind of hoping for this fall. I think that's fairly aggressive. I would say next spring or fall would be, yeah, a pretty healthy target.
When's the next book coming?
You know, the screenplay is so different that I want to focus on that. So I have the whole outline, I have the whole next book, the characters pretty well. Oh, but once the screenplay is done, I'll probably within the next year. Yeah. In the next couple of months, I'll get moving on that.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Yeah, and then I'm working on just a silly, you know, I was reading all these romances online and these Kindle and these people that are making tons of money, and I read a couple and I thought, okay, I could do that. But I can't write that simple. I do think that would be fun to do a little, modern day Montana romance series. I have it kind of set in Gardner in my head. Yeah, I think that would be really fun to write. People love that right now. They love it. Yeah, get what's going on. Roll with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for being here so much. Thank you so much.